I've created a presentation that's got way too many slides in it, so I'll be speaking pretty quickly once we get things up and running. So what I'll give you essentially is a teaser. We haven't presented the geology much for Cordero. We just finished a feasibility in February. So our feasibility ends up with about $1.2 billion NPV at a 5% discount and contemplating a 19-year mine life. We, of course, are just an open pit mine. We have submitted permits we submitted our MIA back in August. We've gone through technical review. We submitted additional information in March, and we're waiting final news on our MIA submission. Of course, elections will create some challenges, well, some delays for us, but we're pretty confident we can get through the process. All right. So the last time we did a technical presentation was, well, we presented for smaller groups, but nobody as large as this group. We've ended up, I think I presented in Cordero and Roundup in Vancouver a couple of years ago, so this is a bit of an update. When we did our feasibility study, we used, for the resource itself, the update, we ended up using $24 silver. If you've been watching the market recently, silver surpassed $32 the last couple of days. It's come off a bit today, but it's much, much higher than we ever thought we'd get to. When we first took on this project back in 2019, silver was $14. So we thought we could make a project out of Cordero at $14 silver. Our economics our resources done at $24 silver, and the reserve pit was cut at $20 silver with the economics presented at $22 silver. Now every time silver goes up $5, we end up adding about $200 million NPV to our project. So it's a very strongly silver price leveraged project, which is invisible right now. Okay, here, let's try this again. Okay, so it proves I am technically challenged. So I'll just quickly go through locations. So we are in the southern part of Chihuahua State. We're close to a town called Parral. Parral is a historical mining town. It was founded around a mine called Mina Prieta. They had mining there since 1640. Of course, there's San Francisco de Oro to the west as well. And so it's definitely a very mining-oriented area. So the project itself is east of the Sierra Madre Occidental, and it's on the western side of the eastern Mexican Basin and Range. So our host rock essentially is the Mescalero Formation, which is a shallow intercalated marine sediment. So along in that same basin range, we're trying to highlight where we are. I put a circle around Cordero and a star, and you can see just north of us is Nica, but this is all part of the Mexican silver belt. So we're on a very strong trend of mineralizing systems. And if we focus in a little bit closer, so Parral, you can see Cordero in the large letters. Parral's 35 km just southwest of Cordero. Infrastructure-wise, we're 200 road kilometers. That's all paved highways down to our turnoff to our project. We're south of Chihuahua City, and then we're 12 kilometers private gravel road into the project itself. So it's about the easiest project you can get to. 75 kilometers to the northeast of us on the right side of this slide is the Camargo power station. So when people say we're close to a power line, we're very close. The power line cuts probably within 2 kilometers of the deposit itself. We do know that the power station does have capacity to support our project. So that's already been solved. We're not wondering if it's there. We do have capacity. What I'll do is now, when we first took on the project, we did a satellite imagery interpretation. So the black outline is our 35,000 hectare mineral leases. We did a landform analysis. In here you can see northwest trending, these black and red and blue lines. We have thrust faults, normal faults in blue, and then strike split in black. And that's the regional fabric, the northwest regional fabric. And Cordero happens to be in a discordant northeast trending structural corridor. So within that structural corridor, we have a lot of intrusives. So we call that our magmatic hydrothermal belt. So There's 3 of these structural corridors we identified on our property, and the center one is where Cordero deposit is. So on the top right green oval, in the middle of that, you'll see a little red outline. That's our resource pit outline. Is essentially the green zone is, we're trying to highlight where there's dilation between 2 left lateral faults. And the Cordero project is right where our fault bend is. So that's a natural place for dilation, and that's why the intrusives are there, and that's why our mineralization is there. So it looks like some arm waving here is on the left side. There's another structural bend on the left side, so there's still some upside for future exploration here too. We have other zones to 10 kilometers south is La Perla, where we're working right now doing some surface mapping, and then we've looked at some stuff 10 kilometers north at Porfirio Norte. But that sort of gives you the setting of where we are. Trying to present, we're focused a lot closer here now too on our lithology. So this is a lithology map based on a compilation of surface mapping as well as surface projected lithologies from drill hole data. I'm trying to introduce you to some of the main rock types. First of all, the black outline is a resource pit outline. The dark or the pink magenta colors are rhyodiacites. The lighter pink colors are flow foliated rhyodiacites, same composition, just with flow fabrics. The blues is a lumped combination of our breccias. We have intrusive breccias, polymitic breccias, and we have sediment breccias as well. One thing that's interesting in the in the bright green, there's a sort of a late sin and mostly post-mineral dike, which is also a little bit more dacitic composition, and that dike follows a lot of these northeast trending faults. So the black dotted lines are the faults that we've mapped out. And the very far northeast, the top right of the slide, there's some lighter green colors. We've called it a rock type, but it's actually, we're representing scar alteration. So we just separated it as a rock type, even though it's alteration, to highlight where we have some more alteration of the mescalera formation. So the brown tan color is our sediment host rock. The blue dotted lines are normal faults. So the normal faults drop southwest side, so left side downwards. So the deepest part of the strat column is on the top right, and then we get higher in this section down to the lower left. So this is just the strat column itself, showing the cross-cutting nature of the green. We'll call them post-mineral dikes for now. The hash marks are the mescalera formation, and the orange colors are our skarn mineralization, and the pinks are the rhyodiacites. So we did quite a bit of age dating, trying to understand the age of mineralization. So essentially, our deepest intrusives would be a sort of a monzonite in orange at the bottom, are about 38 million years old. We have our rhyodiacites around 37 up to 36 million years old, and then the post-mineral dike is around 36 million years old. So our mineralization is between 37 and 36 million years. So it was good to know. But one thing we do know about our mineralization, it's structurally controlled. So all these lithologies, other than the post-mineral dike, were in place before mineralization occurred. Here's some visuals. So this is our main rhyodiacite in the top left. Bottom left, you'll see the flow foliated textures. In the top right, it's a flow foliated rhyodiacite, but it has sediment clasts in it. So we start seeing the clasts when we get close to contacts with the mescalera formation. The bottom right is our post-mineral dike. It's a glomerific dike, so you get the feldspars that cluster into groups. And then with the chloride alteration, it's pretty obvious which unit that is. And the very bottom, there's a strip that shows our serrate rhyodacite, and it's got some potassic alteration and some hematite alteration in that. So here, most of these examples were for textural examples, and these examples are not the mineralized versions. But that's just so we can see what they look like. So then we have a number of breccias. So we have an intrusive breccia. You can see it has both flow foliated class and non-foliated class with an intrusive matrix. Bottom left is still an intrusive matrix. But it has a lot more sediment class in it, and as well as rhyodacite class. Top right gives you an example of what the polymitic breccias are in contact with the black mescalera formation there. And then the bottom right is a mud matrix sediment breccia. So some of where our sediments in the northeast are altered, the top left is what we're calling our garnet skarn. Bottom left is more of a lacylate skarn. Top right, we get a little bit more phlogopite and dolomitic skarn. And then the pinkish stuff on the bottom right ends up being, it's more of a hornfels skarn, but it's adularia skarn. So all these rock types here aren't particularly mineralized, but they all can be mineralized. So what happens as a model, it's the nature of the mineralization changes its character based on the rock type that the fractures are crossing, and the fractures are the fluid conduits for that mineralization. So we have on the far right, at the deepest levels, we have our quartz monzonite. So we have intrusive source fluids that look for structure, and as it flows up the structure, we end up with wall rock interaction and residence in those fracture systems, different styles of mineralization. We have a zoning with tungsten, more tungsten and copper at depth. Turns out most of our gold ends up on the southwest side, so at the higher elevations we have some gold mineralization. There's lead, zinc, silver throughout, with higher concentration of zinc on the northeast side, so to the right of the slide. So we have both lateral and vertical zoning in metals. We'll leave it there. So we did a whole lot of thin section work. So what I've done is I've just dumped a list of the most common mineralization that we see in all those thin sections, trying to organize them for, between main stage mineralization, the skarn mineralization, gang on the bottom right, and the mineralization styles. So we have the main mineralization is stockwork and disseminated mineralization, where the faults and the structures are sort of stronger. We end up with sulfide veins themselves, and anywhere where we get breccias, we get matrix filled breccias with sulfides, so we can get massive sulfides. In the mescalare formation, we get the replacement style mineralization. We do get quartz calcite mainly as gang, where there's no sulfide in the stockworks, but we also get barite as a late stage with mineralization, also with epithermal textures. So we end up with the main economic minerals are of course sphalerite and galena. There always seems to be pyrite with sphalerite and galena, and then we get other silver sulfur salts throughout as well. Most of the gold that we see in thin section is as electrum, which is interesting to see. And then again the scheelite powellite. We end up with the tungsten at depth in the calc-silicates. Okay, so mineralizing styles. So we get the top left is some of this a little bit more massive sulfide mineralization. So that you can see the galena and the bright sort of bright gray is all galena. Then the browns is sphalerite. And then underneath we have a strong sort of phyllic alteration. We still get more disseminated mineralization outside of the more massive zones. Top right is an example of some of the replacement mineralization. We do get mineralization parallel to bedding, and some of that mineralization crosses bedding as well. Bottom right is a sulfide matrix fill on our breccia, and that's also in a phyllic altered. And some of these black spots is disseminated mineralization away from the bigger openings. Some more styles here, more vein styles. In the top left, you'll see a late stage calcite, and that often comes with barite mineralization. So we've got both vein, stockwork, and disseminated mineralization. Top right is phyllic altered disseminated mineralization with a massive vein in it as well. And then bottom right is interesting because it's a calcite barite vein with dissolving textures in the form of stylites, and we end up with sulfides inside those stylites. So this is just some examples of the mineralization in the system. Alteration for us, the most important thing, it seems the best grade mineralization comes with the phyllic alteration, so quartz sericite pyrite. We do have potassic alteration as well, but it's a little bit more scattered. And then the phyllic alteration is more intense where there's higher density fractures. So alteration crosses all lithology boundaries, and it shows up slightly different in each lithology. So we did get anhydrite and gypsum again as the actual minerals themselves, and then and a whole list of stuff in the calcilicate skarn. So getting straight to it, we did an updated resource this year in February. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is what data we use to estimate that resource. The bluish purple outline is our resource pit. That's a constraining pit for our resource statement. The black dots are the colors of drill holes, so those represent over 790 drill holes. We've got over 300,000 meters of data within that. I'm going to show you a couple cross sections. The long section AA will show first, and we'll show lithology, alteration, and then our actual resource blocks. So the resource itself, the purple constraining pit, is 3.6 kilometers long and about 1.7 kilometers wide. That resource pit goes over 700 meters deep. So then the reserve pit, which was done at more conservative numbers, I think the reserve pit itself was optimized at $20 silver, and then the contained blocks were then estimated for economic potential at $22 silver. Did I mention silver's 30 bucks? Anyways. So this is our resource statement. So overall, our average grade, our silver equivalent grade is 50, for measured indicated is 52 grams silver equivalent. You can see the individual metal grades here, but measured, indicated, and inferred resources is 1.3 billion ounces silver equivalent. And then we have our pit constraints here at 24 silver, 18 gold, $1.10 lead, and $1.20 zinc. So that, in case you're wondering, that's large. So what we try to look at here, so the same lithologies that we showed in plan view, now we're looking in the long section. I have the resource pit in blue, again about 600 meters deep here. These squares are, the grid here are 500 meter blocks. The red line is the economic pit we did for the reserve. So the magentas are more massive rhyodacite. The pinks are the flow-foliated rhyodacite. And interestingly, the blues are the breccias. So most of the blues are lateral to the intrusive dikes and sills, and also in between the dikes and sills. Originally, it was thought that these breccias represent diatremes that come from the center, but it looks like it's just related to the edges of these sills and dikes. The green, it's a bit of a skew version of it's a skew view of our post-mineral dikes. And then the tan is all the calcareous host rock. And then on the bottom right, the lighter green stuff, we were just representing where most of the skarn mineralization are. So the offsets you see are faults that didn't end up on my section, but you can see some of the offsets of these faults. So these faults here, because we're looking northwest, those will be normal faults, so left side down. So our entire lithology package plunges about 30 degrees to the north and also dips about 30 degrees to the southeast. So here we see the plunge to the northeast. This is the same section, but with alteration. So the salmon color is our phyllic alteration. The pink stuff is our potassic alteration. The ocean-wide blue, that's carbonate alteration, but we have a carbonate everywhere. So the Mescalero formation due to deformation has remobilized calcite, but there's also hydrothermal calcite, which we see with our black lights in the core shack. So the most important part of this is this slide. Here we've used NSR calculations to evaluate our economic potential for our resources. Our blocks are 10 by 5 by 20 meter blocks. And you can see the red outline of the economic pit tries to grab the highest grade. Here's the $40 NSR material, and the resource pit. And here these blocks are 300 meter square grids. And so you can see there's a lot of blocks of mineralization outside of the reserve pit still contained within the resource pit. And I have about 600 meters of blocks of mineralization identified that don't even make the resource table. So if we did, we could redo the resource at whether it's $25 or $30 silver, and then you're going to start. Then the optimizer will start mining some of those other blocks. So this is one of the reasons we say we're so leveraged to a silver price for our property. So we'll look at a cross section now in the middle of the deposit. So here you see the southeast dip, about 35 degree dip for our sills and dikes. Again, the magenta is a more massive rhyodacite. The pinks are the flow foliated. And then our post-mineral dikes are the green, and the blues are the breccias. Alteration, again, the phyllic alteration is the salmon-colored stuff, potassic pink, So most of the fill alteration stays within the economic pit. So that's why we say it seems to track the best grade of our mineralization. So fill alteration is critical for us. And then the NSR blocks. So again, you see the economic pit in red tries to mine as many of the high-grade blocks as possible, but there's a substantial amount of high grade that's outside of that $20 optimized pit and still encapsulated within the resource pit. So this is our reserve statement. So the biggest takeaway from this is in our reserve, it's 302 million ounces silver alone, about, I'll call it 3 billion pounds lead and about 5 billion pounds zinc. So this is contemplated to be mined within 19 years. And here you can see again the pit constraints. So I tried to highlight the difference between the reserve and the resource pit here again. And so what we've done is tabulated the tons of mineralized material that are above cutoff for the resource. Is we have about 200 million tons of resource blocks outside of the current reserve pit. Those 240 million tons represent about 190 million ounces of silver alone. So just change the price and we add 190 million ounces to our story. So we've done a lot of metallurgical programs. The most recent one was to optimize reagents. I think it's like 6 or 7 different programs. We talk about year 1 to 4 having better recoveries because we mine some of the better grades in the first 4 years, and the recoveries tend to be better at our higher grade mineralization. But even life of mine, 87% silver recovery is pretty good, and the lead and zinc is pretty good as well. Oh, and we mentioned here, like one of the benefits we have is our mineralization is quite coarse grained, so we're planning a 200 micron grind. So it's a very coarse grind for liberation and then for flotation. So why do we say that we're one of the largest undeveloped silver projects? Sort of here as a comparison, we're trying to show some of the other companies that are major silver producers. We got the 302 million ounce reserve highlighted here for discovery in orange, and then market caps listed below. But these market caps were calculated in February, so I just haven't adjusted them, but their relative market cap's still the same. So Kerr has, for their silver reserves, they end up totaling 4 projects to make up their reserves. Same as Hecla, that includes 4 different projects to tally up their 200 and some odd million ounces silver reserves. Pan American, I think it's 6 or 7 projects that make up their just shy of 500 million ounce reserves. So with one project, you end up being a pretty major reserve. Here we're trying to show the difference between the all-in sustaining costs and projected production. So we're contemplating producing 33 million ounces silver equivalent over the life of mine in 19 years, 33 million ounces per year, sorry. The size of the bubble equals to the size of the reserve, and then the all-in sustaining cost is on the y-axis. So we're life of mine, we're about just under $1,350 all-in sustaining costs, and then for the first, I believe 8 years, we're like just around $1,250. So where are we now? We talked about our large scale production. We end up with more production earlier on in the year of the mine life because of grades. We talked about all-in sustaining costs. So our NPV after tax is 1.2 billion, and our NPV to capex ratio is about 2x. So you don't want 1 to 1 or less. So our capex ratio is pretty good. So during the construction, we'll end up with about 2,500 jobs. During production, it'll be about 1,000 jobs, and a lot of, I think it's over 4 billion in local goods and then 1.4 billion in taxes. On the top right, we talk about a growing NPV. So what happens is, at the beginning, we start with 25,000 tons per day, and our expansion goes to 51,000 tons per day. So our NPV at 25,000 tons per day is 1.2 billion, and then once we pay off the startup, it self-finances the next 300 million, and then at 50,000 tons per day, our value still increases to 2.2 billion. That's how that works. So we're fortunate because we're located on private land. There is an ejido nearby, the ejido Cordero. We cross their land on our access road, and they have some peripheral lands around us. We have some opportunities to work with Paral with respect to water sources for the project itself. Here's a quick look at our layouts. We tried to keep it compact. You can see the reserve pit. It's got a bit of space around it, so that's anticipation for expansion should silver price go above 22, which I think it has. Shows a power line, etc. And this is a production profile. So this is a silver equivalent production on the left, on the y-axis, and then the years on the x-axis, and then the coloring shows a silver and gray, a little bit of gold, the lead and zinc. So we end up, after the first 3 years of production, we end up with higher production in year 4 because we've expanded to 50,000 tons per day. In year 8, our highest production is because we hit a high-grade portion in the south corridor of our deposit. We get another high-grade portion at depth. So equivalence, life of mine is 635 million ounces silver equivalent. So also a substantial amount. So where are we now? We submitted our permits I talked about earlier. We're talking through banks and other finance options to line up our financing for the 600 million capex we would need to get started. And we're advancing some engineering work right now as we're waiting for permits. So I wanted to leave you here with our sensitivity table we put in our feasibility report. Luckily, silver came off $32, and we don't have to redo this table yet, but soon. So at $1.20 zinc and $22 silver, that's our 1.2 billion NPV. And you can see as we change the price, $3 at 25, and then at 30, we're 2 billion essentially. And then at year 4, after paying back, we'll end up being, I think it's 2.3 or 2.4 billion NPV. So very silver price leveraged and a size large project. Thank you. Questions I might handle in Spanish, we'll see. I appreciate that you're overwhelmed and you don't have questions. Great.